There is a specific kind of day in every year where the sky stops narrating your life and starts editing it. Not with the loudness of a crisis, not with the theatrics of a dramatic collision between planets, but with the quiet, irreversible click of something structural being put permanently into place. March 28, 2026 is that kind of day. And if you are watching this, if something in the hours before you arrived here has felt slightly different from ordinary life, slightly heavier with meaning, slightly more weighted with the sense that an accumulation of something is finally reaching a point of resolution, you are not projecting. You are perceiving accurately. Something is indeed different about today. And it is different in a way that will still be true 6 months from now, when you look back at this period and understand, in retrospect, exactly what shifted. Today, Saturn at 5 degrees of Aries forms an exact sextile to Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. One aspect, one precise mathematical angle between two of the slowest and most consequential planets in the solar system. 60 degrees of cooperative alignment between the planet of structure, consequence, and earned authority, and the planet of transformation, power, and the kind of change that does not be undone. You might hear that description and imagine something dramatic. In reality, the Saturn sextile Pluto does not feel like fireworks. It feels like a decision made in a quiet room that changes everything. It feels like the morning after a long conversation where something was finally said out loud that had been hovering in silence for years. It feels like standing up from a table you sat down at as one version of yourself and realizing, halfway to standing, that the person standing is already slightly different. The sextile is the most underestimated aspect in astrology. It is not the explosive tension of a square. It is not the merging intensity of a conjunction. It is not even the sweeping, flowing ease of a trine. The sextile is something more specific. It is an angle of cooperative potential, a geometry that says these two forces can work together, but only if you choose to activate it. It requires participation. It requires intention. It requires that you be present enough to use what it offers, rather than letting it pass as simply a pleasant undercurrent in the day's atmosphere. When the two planets involved are Saturn and Pluto, when the cooperation being offered is between discipline and transformation, the sextile becomes one of the most practically useful aspects the sky can produce. Not given freely, not handed to the passive observer. Available, specifically and generously, to anyone who decides today to act with both seriousness and courage. The last time Saturn and Pluto formed this cooperative sextile, Saturn was in Scorpio and Pluto was in Capricorn. That was 2012 and 2013. You may remember that period as one of structural reckoning. On a collective level, systems being audited, old forms of power being examined with unusual seriousness, new frameworks tentatively beginning to form from the debris of older ones. What is different about this sextile is the signs involved. Saturn is now in Aries, the sign of personal initiation, individual courage, and the first bold step. Pluto is in Aquarius, the sign of collective evolution, systemic reinvention, and the long, patient rewriting of what power means in a community context. The axis has shifted from internal Scorpio depth to outward Aries fire, and from Capricorn institutional structures to Aquarian collective intelligence. This is no longer about auditing legacy systems in private. This is about building new ones in public, starting with the self. That shift matters because it changes where the work of today takes place. It does not take place in boardrooms or institutions or the large abstract machinery of collective change, though those things are certainly being affected. It takes place in the specific, particular, undeniably personal arena of who you are choosing to become. Saturn in Aries has been asking all of us, since February of this year, a question that has no comfortable answer. What are you willing to actually begin? Not prepare to begin, not almost begin. Not conceptually commit to beginning. What are you willing to walk directly into, even knowing the cost, even knowing the difficulty, even knowing that Aries beginnings often involve starting before you feel fully ready? And Pluto in Aquarius has been exerting its slow, enormous pressure on the collective, What needs to be dismantled so that something more honest can exist in its place? Today, these two questions stop asking separately and start asking together. And the answer, whenever you locate it, will be the most important thing you understand about this particular moment in your life. Stay with this, because what follows is going to explain not just the mechanics of what is happening above, but exactly where it lands for every sign, every house, every specific corner of your life that this rare alignment is now entering. Before we go deeper into today's sky, there is something I want to offer you. If you have arrived at this video feeling the particular weight of a crossroads, that specific inner pressure that says something important needs to be decided, something real needs to be built, or something old needs to finally be let go of, that feeling is not random. It is pointing at something true. And sometimes the clearest map for navigating that kind of moment is not advice from outside, but your own cosmic blueprint decoded with care. A deeply personal astrology reading built from the exact moment and place of your birth can reveal precisely what you are here to do, what patterns have been running beneath the surface of your choices, and what the major transits of 2026 are specifically activating in your own chart. Your sun, moon, and rising decoded. A deep dive into love and relationships, career and wealth, or your spiritual path. Hidden karmic patterns. A month-by-month 2026 forecast mapped to your natal placements, and a personal transmission about what your soul is ready for right now. Delivered as a personal audio reading and a detailed PDF report straight to your inbox within 48 hours. The link is below. Now, let us go into what today actually means. To understand why today carries the particular quality it does, it helps to understand what both of these planets have been doing leading into this moment, not just in isolation, but as part of the full atmospheric context of March 2026. Saturn entered Aries in February of this year. This is the first time Saturn has occupied this sign since 1999, which means for anyone born after the turn of the millennium, this is an entirely new experience. Saturn in Aries is inherently paradoxical. Saturn wants to slow down, to consolidate, to build layer by layer with patience and accumulated effort. Aries wants to go immediately, boldly, without needing to justify the leap in advance. When these two energies are placed inside the same sign, the result is not a cancellation of either quality with a specific fusion, the courage to begin fused with the discipline to continue. The instinct to act fused with the maturity to act wisely. Aries fire passing through Saturn's requirement for substance and earning rather than impulse and assumption. This combination has been building a particular kind of internal pressure in all of us since February. The pressure of knowing that something needs to start, that the window for thoughtful initiation is genuinely open, and that it is time to stop rehearsing and start building. Pluto entered Aquarius definitively in November of 2024 and will remain there until 2043. Its presence in Aquarius is already reshaping the collective conversation about power, community, technology, and what it means for systems to serve people rather than the reverse. Pluto's movement through any sign is generational. What is happening in Aquarius over these coming decades will not be visible in its full shape for another 20 years. But in the meantime, its early degrees carry a particular quality of dismantling whatever Aquarius governs that has calcified, become exclusionary, or lost its connection to genuine collective benefit. The early degrees of any Pluto transit carry a raw, clearing energy. Old forms are dissolved before new ones are established. The space between what was and what will be can feel vertiginous, unmoored, in need of a framework. That is precisely what Saturn in Aries provides, and between them sits the moon, which today moves through Leo. The Leo moon is significant here because it creates a specific emotional tone that is neither passive nor withdrawn. Leo is the sign of the heart's expression, of the self that needs to be witnessed and honored, of the creative force that insists on being seen for what it genuinely is, rather than what is convenient or expected. A Leo moon on a day of Saturn sextile Pluto does not allow the day's energy to remain merely structural, merely technical, merely about discipline in the abstract. It personalizes everything. It makes the question emotional. It connects the hard work of Saturn with the deep felt need of Leo to live in a life that actually reflects who you are. This is not just a day for doing responsible things. It is a day for doing them from the place in you that knows what it is for. The moon in Leo also makes an exact trine to the sun in Aries today. Sun trine. Moon is one of the quietly lovely aspects that does not receive as much attention as it deserves. It creates an internal coherence between what you consciously want and what you emotionally need. On an ordinary day, this would simply produce a feeling of ease or harmony between your goals and your feelings. On today, when it is operating inside a Saturn-Pluto sextile, that coherence becomes the foundation of action. You are not divided against yourself today in the way that so much inner conflict usually manifests. The part of you that knows what is right and the part of you that feels what is right are saying the same thing. That alignment is rare, and it is one of the most useful conditions under which to make decisions that will hold. Additionally, the moon in Leo will oppose Pluto in Aquarius today. That opposition creates a brief but acute tension between personal self-expression and the demands of the collective or the larger systemic forces at work. It may surface as a moment where what you need personally seems to conflict with what is being asked of you on a broader level. But within the architecture of the sextile, that tension is not destructive, it is informative. It is the specific friction that tells you where your authentic self is not yet fully integrated into the structures you are building. The discomfort, wherever it appears, is pointing at the precise seam where genuine transformation is needed. Mercury, now direct since March 20th and moving forward through Pisces at 9 degrees, adds its own layer to all of this. Mercury direct after a retrograde in Pisces carries a specific quality of revelations that arrived during the retrograde now having to be spoken aloud, applied practically, and integrated into real decisions. The things that surfaced in the introspective fog of the past 3 weeks are not being left behind. They are traveling forward with you now in the possession of a mind that has regained its directional momentum. What you understood about yourself during Mercury retrograde, what you saw more clearly in the soft, dissolving light of Pisces contemplation, is now available as material for the building that Saturn is asking you to do. The insight has been delivered. Today is when it is put to use. Mars at 17 degrees of Pisces remains in that sign, adding a motivated, intuitive quality to the day's overall texture. Mars in Pisces does not drive forward through strategy and analysis. It moves through sensing and yielding, through following the felt pull rather than the mapped route. In the context of a Saturn sextile Pluto, Mars in Pisces is the reminder that not all of the work happening today is visible and concrete. Some of it is internal. Some of it is the quiet alignment of your deeper motivations with your outward commitments. Some of it is simply the decision to trust the direction you have been feeling called toward, even without being able to fully articulate why. That trust, backed by Saturn's discipline and Pluto's depth, is not naive. It is the most structurally sound version of surrender available. Jupiter at 15 degrees of Cancer, direct since March 10th, trines the North Node in Pisces. This configuration has been operating throughout March and continues today, adding a quality of emotional expansion and karmic forward movement to the collective atmosphere. The North Node in Pisces points towards spiritual surrender, compassionate wisdom, and the release of the need to control what cannot be controlled. Jupiter in Cancer expands emotional intelligence, deepens the capacity for care, and reconnects everyone with the ancestral emotional threads that form the bedrock of real resilience. The trine between them is a current that runs beneath today's Saturn-Pluto sextile, a supportive undercurrent that says the structures you are building today are not being built against your emotional nature. They are being built in support of it. Venus at 22 degrees of Aries completes a picture that is predominantly fire and water, initiative and intuition, structure and feeling. Venus in Aries moves through desire directly, without the mediating diplomacy of other signs. It wants what it wants, and it is not ashamed of wanting it. On a day when Saturn is asking for honest commitment and Pluto is asking for genuine transformation, Venus in Aries is the emotional honesty engine that ensures neither of those processes becomes merely intellectual. You are not simply analyzing what needs to change today. You are feeling it in your chest, in your gut, in the specific places where desire and dread live side by side, where wanting something and being afraid of it are not contradictions, but the same truth, wearing two faces. There is a reason astrologers describe the Saturn-Pluto sextile as generationally significant rather than merely notable. The last occurrence of this aspect ran through 2012 and 2013. Before that, it appeared in 1994 and 1995. Each time, approximately a decade to a decade and a half apart, the same fundamental question arrives, wearing the costume of whatever signs are involved. What does it look like when genuine discipline and genuine transformation decide to cooperate? And each time the answer is different because the signs are different, because the cultural moment is different, because the people being asked the question have been shaped by an entirely different set of collective experiences. In 2012 and 2013, with Saturn in Scorpio and Pluto in Capricorn, the question was, what happens when you investigate the shadow side of institutional power? The answer, though it took years to fully surface, reshaped regulatory frameworks, open-source technology, and the structural relationship between media and public trust. Those were not small changes. They were the kind that rewrote the rules for how the next decade operated. In 1994 and 1995, with Saturn in Pisces and Pluto in Scorpio, the question was, what happens when you build new structural containers for invisible, intuitive, previously uncharted territory? The internet was being commercially launched. NAFTA was reshaping trade. New frameworks for global interconnection were being sketched out, tentatively and imperfectly, by people who had no model to work from, because the model did not yet exist. The answer arrived over the following decade in the form of a completely reconfigured world. Now, in 2026, with Saturn in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius, the question is new and it is more personal than either of the previous versions. Aries is not a sign of institutions or systems. It is the sign of the individual self. The first word of the zodiac, the primal I am. Saturn asking its question through Aries is asking it to each person individually, not collectively, not abstractly, not as a matter of policy or system. To you. Who are you actually choosing to be? What are you beginning? What authority over your own life are you claiming? And Pluto asking its question through Aquarius is asking it in terms of collective reinvention from the ground up. What power structures are being dismantled? What does genuine community look like when it is built on the intelligence and autonomy of its individuals rather than on the compliance of a managed group? Together, those two questions produce the specific invitation of today. Build the life you are actually here to build, starting from who you actually are, in alignment with a collective shift that is already underway and that requires exactly this kind of individual authenticity to sustain itself. This is not abstract. It is as specific as the area of your own chart where 5 degrees of Aries falls. And for every sign, that area is different, which means the line Saturn is drawing today lands in a different place for each of you, a different house, a different domain of life, a different set of questions being made suddenly and inescapably clear. What is important to understand about the sextile as an aspect is that it does not impose. This is genuinely the most significant thing to grasp about today's energy and the most common misunderstanding of what a Saturn-Pluto sextile means in practice. A square imposes. A conjunction merges and sometimes overwhelms. Even a trine, for all its ease, tends to deliver its gifts whether or not you actively engage with them. The sextile waits. It creates the condition. It opens the door. It arranges the room. But it does not push you through the threshold. The activation of a sextile is an act of will. And Saturn, in particular, has always been the planet that rewards effort over passive reception. today is not going to transform your life by simply washing over you while you go about your normal Saturday. It is going to offer you the exact tools required for the next chapter of your building, and whether or not those tools get picked up depends entirely on whether you are present enough to notice them and intentional enough to use them. The standalone quality of this transit matters too. This sextile between Saturn and Pluto occurs only once in 2026. It is not part of a series of passes at this aspect, the way some aspects repeat 2 or 3 times over several months due to retrograde motion. This is its singular occurrence this year. What becomes clear today, what is decided today, what is honestly faced or honestly begun today, does not get a second pass at the same aspect in October. This is the window, not the only window ever available for transformation and structure. But this specific cooperation between these specific energies at these specific degrees, in these specific signs, today only, that is not meant to create pressure, it is meant to create attention. The kind of attention that says, I am going to be fully here for this, because this particular kind of clear is only available today. For Aries, the Sun's current position illuminates your first house even as Saturn settles into it and begins its long work of reconstructing your identity from the inside out. The sextile to Pluto lands in your 11th house of community, collective purpose, and the vision of what you are building for something larger than your individual life. What becomes possible today is the alignment between who you are choosing to be, Aries, first house, personal identity, and Saturn's discipline shaping it, and the collective field in which that identity must ultimately find its expression. The question being asked in your chart is not simply, who am I? It is, who am I in relation to something that matters beyond myself? That is a more complex and ultimately more sustaining question, and today offers the structural clarity to begin answering it honestly. For Taurus, the sextile activates your 12th and 10th houses. Saturn in your 12th is engaged in the least visible but most foundational work available in any chart. The excavation of what is hidden, the release of what has been carried in silence, the restructuring of the deep interior that shapes everything on the surface but rarely gets direct attention. Pluto in your 10th has been transforming your public role, your career architecture, your relationship to authority and ambition for over a year. The sextile between these two houses today creates a genuine cooperation between inner clearing and outer building. What you release from the hidden interior of your 12th house is directly related to what can rise in the public sphere of your 10th. You cannot build the outer structure while the inner foundation is compromised. Today, both are being addressed at once. For Gemini, Saturn moves through your 11th house and Pluto operates in your 9th. Your 11th house governs your vision for the future, the communities you belong to, the causes and groups that carry meaning for you. Your 9th house governs belief, philosophy, long-distance movement, and the expanding mind that reaches beyond what is immediately known. Saturn asking you to build something real in your 11th, while Pluto transforms your 9th, means that the visions you have been carrying about what you want your future to look like are being tested under pressure against what you actually believe is possible and meaningful. Today is the day when those two things, vision and belief, must be honest with each other. The future you are genuinely building is the one supported by the beliefs you actually hold, not the ones you think you should hold. For Cancer, the sextile spans your 10th and 8th houses. Saturn in your 10th is perhaps the most direct Saturnian territory available, the house of career, reputation, public role, and the long-disciplined accumulation of mastery. Pluto in your 8th has been doing transformative work in the realm of shared resources, deep psychological material, and the power dynamics that run through your closest bonds. What is being aligned today is the outer structure of your public life with the inner transformation of your most intimate emotional landscape. These are not separate projects. The way you show up professionally is directly shaped by what is being transformed in the depths of your 8th house. Today, that connection becomes unusually visible and unusually productive. The integrity of the inner work is the foundation of the outer achievement. For Leo, Saturn moves through your 9th house and Pluto through your 7th. Your ninth house governs philosophy, belief, the narratives you use to make sense of your experience, and the kind of expansion that comes from reaching beyond the familiar. Your seventh house governs partnership, significant one-to-one relationships, and the mirror that other people hold up to your developing self. Saturn in your ninth is asking you to be rigorous with what you believe, to stop accepting received narratives that do not actually hold up under honest scrutiny, to build a personal philosophy solid enough to stand on. Pluto in your seventh is transforming your relationships at a level that cannot be negotiated with or politely avoided. The sextile between them today says, your beliefs about what partnership means and what you deserve in relationship are being structurally tested and structurally upgraded. The beliefs that do not survive that testing were never actually supporting you. For Virgo, the sextile runs between your 8th and 6th houses. The 8th house is already Pluto's natural territory, and Saturn in Virgo's 8th is asking for radical honesty about shared resources, financial entanglement, psychological contracts, and the hidden agreements that shape your closest bonds. Pluto in your 6th is transforming your daily systems, your health practices, your work routines, the structures through which you maintain your body and your efficiency. The cooperation here is between deep structural reckoning and daily life reinvention. What is being held in the psychological depths of your 8th house is directly affecting the quality and sustainability of your daily practices. The clearing and building must happen simultaneously, not sequentially. Today supports exactly that simultaneous movement. For Libra, Saturn in your 7th house and Pluto in your 5th create one of the more relational sextiles in the chart. Your 7th house, under Saturn's influence, is being asked to formalize, to commit, to move past the enjoyment of possibilities toward the honest weight of actual partnership. Saturn in the 7th is a period of relationship seriousness, of seeing partnerships clearly rather than romantically, of understanding the real costs and real rewards of genuine commitment. Pluto in your 5th has been transforming your relationship to pleasure, creativity, romance, and the expression of joy. The sextile today between these two houses asks, what does committed partnership actually look like when the joy has been purified of illusion? When you are no longer performing connection but genuinely inhabiting it? The answer that forms today will shape the relational architecture of the months ahead. For Scorpio, the sextile activates your 6th and 4th houses. Saturn in your 6th is engaged in the disciplined restructuring of your daily life, your health practices, your work rhythms, and the countless small choices that cumulatively constitute the texture of your experience. Pluto in your 4th is doing the deep ancestral work of transforming your relationship to home, family, emotional foundations, and the inherited patterns that operate beneath conscious awareness. What connects these two houses today is the recognition that how you live physically and practically is inseparable from the foundation on which your emotional life is built. The daily discipline Saturn is requiring of you in the 6th is not separate from the ancestral healing Pluto is facilitating in the 4th. It is the expression of it. Every small discipline choice you make today in the realm of your daily life is a vote for the new foundation being built beneath you. For Sagittarius, Saturn in your 5th house and Pluto in your 3rd create an unusual and creative sextile. Your 5th house governs self-expression, creativity, play, romance, and the part of you that knows how to be joyfully and unashamedly itself. Saturn here is not suppressing joy. It is maturing it, asking your creative expression to move past the easy pleasures of performance into the more sustaining territory of genuine craft. Your 3rd house under Pluto's slow transformation is rewriting how you think, how you communicate, and the language through which your inner world makes contact with the outer one. The cooperation between a maturing creative voice in your 5th and a fundamentally transformed mind in your 3rd produces today something like the beginning of your actual work. Not the work you have been doing while waiting to be ready, the work you are now ready to begin. For Capricorn, the sextile between your 4th and 2nd houses speaks directly to foundations and resources. Saturn in your 4th is engaged in the serious, sometimes difficult reconstruction of your relationship to home, belonging, family, and the internal sense of being held by something real. Pluto in your second is transforming your relationship to money, sense of worth, and the values through which you decide what your time and energy are actually for. The cooperation between these two houses today is particularly potent for Capricorn because both houses are already Saturnian in their themes: practical, foundational, material. The sextile asks, is the foundation of your life, your home, your family patterns, your sense of rootedness, in genuine alignment with what you say you value? And is what you say you value actually what you are spending your life on? Those two questions rarely get asked together. Today they do. For Aquarius, the stakes of today are uniquely personal because Pluto is transiting your first house, the house of identity and self. This is the most significant and the most demanding of all the Pluto transits precisely because it is not transforming an area of life. It is transforming the self that lives every area of life. Pluto in the first house dismantles who you thought you were so thoroughly and so permanently that the version of you on the other side of it is not recognizable to the version that entered it. Saturn in your third house, sextile your first, is offering structure to that profound disassembling. It is providing language, discipline, and communicative clarity to a transformation that can otherwise feel too vast and too formless to hold. Today you can speak something into being that previously had no words, not because the transformation is complete, because the structure to hold it, temporarily and imperfectly but genuinely, has arrived. For Pisces, the sextile runs between your second and 12th houses. Saturn in your second is the most material of Saturn's placements for you, asking you to build a genuinely honest relationship with what you own, what you earn, what you value, and what it costs, in practical, undeniable terms, to be who you are. Pluto in your 12th is transforming the invisible interior that Pisces knows better than any sign, the realm of dreams, spiritual contracts, ancestral inheritance, and the vast unconscious from which all of your most essential knowing emerges. The cooperation here is between your most external material reality and your most internal spiritual foundation. What is being asked today is not easy. Bring what is most invisible about yourself into what is most material. Let the spiritual depth that Pluto is transforming in your 12th house inform and restructure the practical values and resources of your second. The gap between those two domains of life is closing. Today is one of the clearest days of the year to feel which direction that closing wants to move. There is a physical phenomenon in geology where extreme pressure applied to carbon over a sufficient period of time produces diamonds. The carbon does not resist the pressure. It does not try to remain as it was. It allows the pressure to reorganize its internal structure, and what emerges from that reorganization is not merely different, but fundamentally more ordered, more crystalline, more capable of holding light than anything the original carbon could have managed in its looser, uncompressed form. This is the closest physical analogy to what Saturn sextile Pluto is doing today. The pressure is real, not imagined, not manufactured for the purpose of a dramatic narrative. The kind of pressure that comes from having been aware for some time that something must change, combined with the kind of pressure that comes from finally being placed in the conditions where that change can actually happen. Pluto has been exerting its transformative force on the Aquarian degrees of your chart since late 2024. That is well over a year of slow, inexorable restructuring of whatever Aquarius governs in your personal chart. And Saturn has been in Aries since February, applying its patient, exacting demand for honest construction of whatever Aries governs in your personal chart. Both of those pressures have been building independently, and today they form a cooperative angle. Today, the reorganization they have separately been initiating is given a direction, a common geometry, a shared purpose. What emerges from the specific pressure of a Saturn-Pluto sextile is not chaos, it is clarity. The kind of clarity that does not arrive in comfortable circumstances. The kind that requires you to have been in a process, to have been willing to sit with the difficulty of transformation long enough for the transformation to actually do its work. You cannot receive what today is offering if you have been in complete denial about what has been changing. The sextile is not a rescue from the process. It is the moment in the process where the process becomes productive rather than merely uncomfortable. The moon's opposition to Pluto later in the day adds a necessary note of emotional honesty to all of this. There will likely be a moment today, somewhere between the middle of the day and the late evening, where something feels difficult in a personal and somewhat raw way. A feeling of exposure. A moment where the transformation Pluto is working in your chart brushes directly against something the Leo moon needs, which is to be seen and honored as who you are right now, not who you are becoming, not who you are, but who you are in this exact imperfect and still forming moment. That opposition is not an obstacle to today's larger constructive work. It is one of its most important ingredients. The willingness to be emotionally honest in that moment, to not perform strength or ease when you are actually in the middle of something that cost you, is precisely the kind of integrity that Saturn both demands and rewards. This is also a day where the invisible quality of some of the work being done should be acknowledged and not pathologized. Not all of what Saturn's sextile Pluto activates is visible. Not all of it manifests as a concrete action taken or a decision made or a conversation had. Some of it is internal architecture, the restructuring of how you talk to yourself about your capacity, the quiet dismantling of a story you have been telling about why a certain door is closed to you, the beginning of a new internal organizing principle that has not yet produced visible fruit, but that is already below the surface, beginning to arrange the conditions that will. Invisible work is real work. Saturn, contrary to its reputation, does not only reward the measurable and the tangible. It rewards integrity of process, and integrity of process often happens in the interior, in the places no one else can see, in the choices you make about what you are willing to believe about yourself. What today ultimately produces, for those who are willing to be present for it, is a kind of personal infrastructure. Not the finished building, not the fully realized version of whatever it is you are here to build, but the structural skeleton that makes the building possible, the bones of the thing, the foundation poured not in the naive excitement of someone who does not yet know how difficult the work will be, but in the sober, grounded commitment of someone who has already been in the process long enough to know the cost and has decided to pay it anyway. That decision, whenever and however it arrives in you today, is what Saturday, March 28th, 2026 will ultimately mean in your life when you look back at it from the other side of whatever it is currently on the threshold of beginning. The way this energy lands in the body is worth being honest about, because it is easy to read the language of astrology and expect an experience that is larger, more dramatic, or more obviously transformative than what you actually feel when a major aspect is active. Saturn's sextile Pluto does not arrive with the visceral, almost physical electricity of a Uranus transit. It does not sweep through you with the oceanic dissolution of a Neptune transit. It does not feel like a lightning bolt or a wave. It feels, if you are paying close attention, more like a recognition. A quiet, relatively still moment of knowing. A quality of, oh, that is what this has been about. Or, right, that is what I actually need to do. Or simply, I know what this is now. Recognitions are easy to discount precisely because they do not feel dramatic, but they are among the most consequential forms of knowing available to a human being. A recognition does not require external confirmation. It does not require other people to validate it or circumstances to reflect it back immediately. It arrives as entirely self-evident truth that does not need proof, because it is the proof. The kind of thing you can deny, and many people do, but cannot unlearn once it has arrived. The kind of knowing that changes how you see everything from the moment it lands, even if it takes weeks or months for that changed perception to surface in your behavior and choices. Today, in the specific atmospheric window created by Saturn and Pluto in cooperative alignment, that kind of recognition is more available than usual, more accessible, more willing to arrive in ordinary moments, in a quiet minute between tasks, in the middle of a mundane interaction, in the first few seconds of waking. Not only in meditation or ceremony or the dedicated spiritual practice, though those spaces certainly welcome it. in the gaps, in the pauses, in the moments when the mind briefly stops its narrating and something older and quieter has room to speak. If you feel the recognition arrive today, whether large or small, whether welcome or uncomfortable, the most useful response is to write it down. Not to immediately act on it, not to immediately tell someone about it, not to analyze it until you have decided whether it fits your existing understanding of yourself. Just write it down. Saturn, as has been noted across centuries of astrological practice, is a planet that responds to documentation, to the act of making the invisible visible through the deliberate use of language. There is something about committing a recognition to writing that makes it real in a way that the thought alone cannot sustain. It becomes a record, a marker, a point from which to measure. Here is where I stood when I understood this. Here is what I knew on March 28th. Here is the line. The Leo moon adds a dimension to this that is worth naming separately. Leo is the sign of personal dignity, of the sovereign self that does not require external permission to exist as it genuinely is. On a day when Saturn and Pluto are engaged in the somewhat sobering work of structural reorganization and deep transformation, the Leo moon is an insistence that all of this serious business be conducted in service of a life that actually feels like yours. Not a life that is merely responsible. Not a life that merely meets the expectations of what a disciplined adult is supposed to build. A life with a genuine and visible center that is recognizably, irreducibly yours. That is what Leo cannot surrender, even under pressure, and that insistence today is not a self-indulgence. It is the compass by which all of the structural and transformative work of Saturn and Pluto is being calibrated. You are not building just to build. You are not transforming just to transform. You are constructing the specific architecture of a specific life that belongs to you, that holds your actual nature, that creates the conditions for your particular and unrepeatable version of what a life well lived looks like. Saturn and Pluto in cooperative alignment serve that project. They do not dictate it. The direction is yours. The will is yours. The vision of what is being built is yours. What today offers is the structural support and the transformative depth to begin that building in earnest, honestly, and with the kind of foundation that holds. Saturn draws a line. That is the image that captures today's energy most precisely. Not a wall, not a barrier, not a punishment or a limitation imposed from outside your own developing authority. A line. And like all lines that are actually lines rather than obstacles, it is a point of orientation, a clear marking that says, this is where one thing ends and another begins. This is where before gives way to after. This is where the accumulated pressure of everything that has been building in you finds, finally, a clear direction of release. The days that follow March 28th will carry a particular quality that is difficult to fully anticipate in advance, but that many people recognize in retrospect as one of the defining characteristics of a significant astrological threshold. Things will begin to organize themselves around the recognition or decision or honest acknowledgement that today produced, not all at once, not in the immediate rush of the day after, but steadily and with a kind of internal logic that makes each subsequent development feel less like a surprise and more like a confirmation of something you already knew was coming. The sense that events are now moving in a coherent direction rather than simply happening in sequence. This is what Saturn in Aries, now sextile Pluto in Aquarius, produces over the course of the weeks that follow, an exact aspect, a gradual but unmistakable solidification of what was previously fluid. Ideas that were circling become plans. Plans that were tentative become commitments. Commitments that were commitments in feeling but not in form begin to acquire the specific, practical shape of real structures. Not perfectly, not all at once, but with the distinct and unmistakable quality of something that is actually being built rather than merely being hoped for. Venus moves into Taurus on March 30th, just 2 days from now. That ingress is its own significant event. Venus arriving in the sign of her domicile, the sign where her energy is most at home, most effortlessly itself, most capable of producing the kind of beauty and value and sensory richness that she governs. In the context of today's Saturn-Pluto sextile, that Venus ingress into Taurus is particularly meaningful because it grounds the energies of this day in something tangible and pleasurable. It says, the structures you are building have room for joy. The transformation you are moving through has beauty waiting on the other side of it. The discipline is not the endpoint. The life that discipline makes possible, the life that is rich with genuine value and genuine pleasure and genuine alignment with what you love, that is the end point. Venus in Taurus, arriving in 2 days, is the first confirmation that the serious work of today is in service of something worth building. Mercury continues forward through Pisces and will move into Aries in early April. When Mercury enters Aries and begins to activate the same degrees that Saturn has been working with, the structural and transformational work of this Saturn-Pluto sextile will acquire communicative force. What was recognized internally in late March will begin to be spoken outwardly, planned explicitly, described to others, and put into the world in language. The words will arrive for what is currently still forming in silence. That too is part of the architecture. The recognition, the structure, the language. Each arriving in its proper sequence, each doing the part of the work that only it can do. Mars, now at 17 degrees of Pisces, moves toward Aries in early April as well, and when it arrives it will reignite the fire of the Aries stellium with the raw instinctive drive that only Mars in its home sign can produce. What begins in the quiet of today's structural recognition will be moved into active, unambiguous forward motion by Mars's Aries ingress. The sequence from now to middle of April is the complete arc of an initiation, recognition today, grounding in the days that follow, language in early April, and action shortly after. The whole sequence is visible from here. The whole direction is already set. Today is simply where the direction becomes clear. The Sabian symbol for 5 degrees of Aries, the degree at which Saturn sits today, is a triangle with wings. The symbol carries the meaning of the ascent that becomes possible once the form is stable. A triangle, one of the most structurally sound geometric forms, given the capacity for flight not despite its stability but because of it. The discipline creates the form enables the flight. That is not a metaphor for today's sky. It is the exact description of what is on offer. The structure you're committing to today is not the cage. It is the wing. 5 degrees of Aquarius, where Pluto sits, carries the Sabian symbol of a council of ancestors. The image of those who came before, gathered in consultation, their accumulated wisdom available to the present moment through the act of genuinely listening for it. Pluto in Aquarius at this symbol says, the transformation being asked of you is not only yours, it is being prepared for you by something older than your individual lifetime. The lineages of understanding, of survival, of hard-won knowledge about what is true and what holds are present in this process. You are not navigating the transformation of this era alone. You are being accompanied by every version of this question that has ever been honestly faced by anyone who carried a similar responsibility in a different time. That company does not make the work easier, but it makes it less lonely. And sometimes the difference between giving up and continuing is simply the knowledge that you are not the first to stand at this particular threshold. The line has been drawn. It was drawn precisely at 5 degrees of the Aries-Aquarius axis, at a specific minute on a specific afternoon, in the geometry of a sky that knows exactly what it is doing, even when we do not. Your relationship to that line, what you bring to it and what you take from it, and how you let it change what comes next, that is the work of today and of the days that follow. Not the dramatic work, the quiet work, the honest work, the kind that does not produce applause but produces something more durable, a life that is genuinely, structurally, increasingly yours. If this transmission landed in a place that felt true, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a word in the comments below, just one word that captures what today is asking you to begin. I read every single one of those, and more often than not, the comment you leave is the beginning of the recognition being written down, which, as we discussed today, is exactly where Saturn begins its work. Until next time, take care of yourself. Stay present for the line.